I was just left thinking. I'm going to make part two really quickly um, to complete what because I realized I left a lot of things out. But also, once you understand basically this outstanding condition that we find ourselves in of having made absent completely from the decision process, the issues, the consideration process of issues and matters that are important to abortion and oh, I have, Jesus, the other one was horizontal. I'm making this vertical one. Oh well, okay. Um, and of the male being absent from the social and male concerns, male desires, male wishes about our of the species of the human species offspring being completely absent from the subject of what to do about the ability to kill, terminate, abort our pregnancy, because pregnancy is does happen in the woman, but it is the pregnancy of the species. It serves the human species. It doesn't serve only the woman. It's not about you guys. No, the pregnancy is about guys too. I mean, we know this. There, even in the green progressives, you have sometimes voices that seem to want to come back to the true center, which I described in the past videos, and say things like, we are pregnant. Okay. People laughed at, but we got it. We get it. And yeah, it's true. Men are also pregnant. They're, for whatever capacity, they're coming with the pregnancy along uh, for reasons that actually have to do more with before and after. But it is the species that's pregnant. And well, and everything else that has excluded the male. And once you get this epiphany, because if it does hit you, it should feel like an epiphany. Like, wow, how did the entire West get here? How did entire countries come to only think about pregnancy and the issue of terminating our pregnancy, or the fruit of the species, or abortion, however you want to call it. But sometimes you need to animate it to remind people what we're talking about. Um, Not consider also the male. Islam in Muslim countries, they don't have this problem. Uh, at least that. They have a couple of things that they're closer to. What's happening with the lighting in my, let me see. Uh, it's become dark outside. That's why. Okay, because it's such a patriarchal society, that it's a patriarchal society that it kind of comes with it preserved in the whole family of social ideologies and ideologies of family in the Muslim world. The fact that the father is very much part of, and so a woman would not dare consider an abortion. I think in some kind of Arab countries, they have laws for abortion. I don't know anything about this, but in those countries that are, I'm sure the father is, the mother's like, I got to tell the dad, see if he's okay with it. No, not us. We have completely erased the male out of um, out of the whole equation. And I'm thinking more about it. I made the second part to get to propose a possible solution, because I believe if you're going to be critical, you need to also say, okay, so what's your proposal or alternative? And sometimes you forget about that part of a dissertation. Uh, but before I say that, I kind of also was left thinking, isn't it interesting how this condition of the absence of the father and the issue of pregnancy and abortion of the male completely possibly is the result, or we have come to this this form, this state of a society, because of ways that we have treated ourselves in society, things that maybe have, even though we say that feminist movements, we've been suppressing women and not giving them anything and not having them earn money. In a sense, the other side of that is that women manage to not get hit as strongly because the male is the sort of has always been by evolutionary design kind of the one that fights for moving the society forward, this, the clan, the family, the society, the civilization, build the temples. There weren't women building the pyramids, but it's very hard to talk about this. But basically, the natural leader of the species is the male. Can you believe that we've gotten to where it's impossible? It's challenging to say that the natural leader of the species. Well, if you look at the animal kingdom, they are things that the woman may be more important, like in the animal kingdom, and you could say, well, that sure looks like a matriarchal society to me. But when it's all is said and done, it seems that when it's time to move, the woman says, okay, so where are we moving to? It's not the woman that says, hey, let's conquer that other valley and let's take our children. No, the male leads and maybe the woman leads, and I think that is closer to the truth, a more organic way of explaining this polemicized fight that we're having about, what sex are we being unfair to or treating correctly or treating wrongly, is that both lead, and what is important is that we understand in which ways each one leads, and those are interchangeable at the same time. We sometimes it's the guys that taking care of more, end up taking care more of the details of what the household will be like, and maybe women do a job really well and they end up being the one that brings the money. But it's never just one or the other, although it seems to be that because men have built through system and of administration and engineering and stuff, it seems to be the one that proliferate in the job and have always been the breadwinners, not because they dominate the woman, but because the environment of work was designed by men. Anyways, it's I'm never going to get anywhere interesting in the way I talk about it like this. But what is important is delivering the concept that we are wrong in polarizing and only making this only about one thing and that about only about one thing. We need to see the not just fluidity in a pan kind of two-dimensional way, but we have to see three-dimensionality and how things move in time. And so not only do they switch sides occasionally, but we're also moving forward in time. And so we're an organism that changes as it goes forward in time. And that is ultimately the physical, social reality of humanity, of human beings. If we want to talk about our human sciences and how we are and what we're about, we have to have a reasoning capacity that describes this living being in a way that moves and fluidly changing, getting older as it progresses forward in time, three-dimensional, temporal. Otherwise, we're just like shallow, stupidly fixating on drawing a map and then forcing each other to see it that way, and then we take sides and we relegate it to a fight between camps and we stop understanding what we're actually arguing about. So to the proposal. Oh yeah, no, I was saying, would it reflect perhaps how that men got more intensely hit by this, strong institutional laws and institutional systems of telling us and administrating and work hours and rules for everything, and organizing and running society through ink and paper, basically. instead of living wisdom that was more prevalent when males were simply leading, like saying, okay, well, let's all drive on this side. And it was a male that saw the car doesn't work if it drives on the grass, it needs to drive on the asphalt. And so the visual observation of that male, all he did was walk to the place where they decide where cars need to drive and says, I tell you, I'm telling you, I, also male, lead like you, noticed, observed. And so it's all that the car doesn't do well if driving on the grass. It's better if it drives on the asphalt. And so we changed laws, and governments were made by the living experience of the leading male. Now the leading male is basically I don't know what it stays at home. But we are telling ourselves what to do. We're telling ourselves how to think about each other. We're telling ourselves how to treat each other, and what hours and what times and how fast and how much we pay and how much we make. And you know, when suddenly this issue of abortion comes around, it seems that because we're no longer males that, for example, are unhappy about what the government is doing somewhere in the world, and we all go out into the streets like they did in Iran or in whatever other country of the world that is closer to their organic social form, and all the males go out there and shout, and we don't want this kind of leadership, we don't want this kind of government. No, in the West we've all become like, we will obey, 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 obey. And so when finally when this abortion issue comes out, it just didn't surprise anybody that males should be absent from it. Where in a society like a Muslim society, immediately the natural reaction would have been, "What are you talking about? These are my children that you want to dispose of," says the father. Instead, here we're just all too willing to be do whatever, run right over us, and that is a result of industrialization and over systemizing society, and working, how you say, cultivating this institutionalized, systemized, ordered, intimidating, because police also have become very inhuman, especially in America. It's like people, they can get away with anything. They can kill you and they will not, where when you see police in other countries, you see you see more of the humanity. You see their arrogance be more obvious, because precisely it is kind of an unnatural place to be bossing people around with guns and infinite, unending authority. To the natural human, we did not evolve having a class of people deciding on our freedom, or punishing and killing us, within our own clan. We invented that because we saw problems that we wanted to sort of be able to solve. But so you have different intensities of this artificial installation in society. And as all of these systems, institutions, and police institutions, have progressed in the West, and continuing on forward trajectories after winning wars and so forth, and more toys, more institution, more systems, more administration, more laws, and more obedience, and making more room for dominance by more laws, more police, obligations, requirements, needs, needs that we're more capable of now, giving more money or working harder hours in order to feed more of other things. Anyways, as countries continue on the trajectory made by human logic and intelligence, it seems that the one that suffers the most is the male, not the female. Somehow the female gets a little bit spared, It's like, oh, there comes the police. What does a woman do? She kind of stands to the side because she knows the guy is the one that's going to get it. Now, you may want to argue with me, and I've seen a lot of ladies go up there and slap police officers. Yeah, okay. You can find exceptions. You can, especially in the States, you can find wacky exceptions to every rule. But if we're going to talk about anything that is a social condition or a social science, you have to be able to generalize something that more or less describes the perimeters of our natural social design created by evolution, by nature, and our social dynamics and social, they call it roles as if it's something artificial, but our roles are natural roles, okay? And so, yeah, and in this sense, it's interesting how just like women has been spared a little bit, it seems, and she comes along always. She does come along and suffers different amounts of the same, but really it's the guy that has been said, your leadership is being supplanted, substituted. We now push a button. We now respond to these systems and have to obey these things and have everything, all this other stuff that takes care of what was traditionally your role to defend your neighborhood of, now we still kind of erupt because we're never going to not be the natural design. But when we erupt, we find ways that are already installed formats or jigs, if you will, like installed in society, and then we act up because that's what males do. But when they do, it's again, instead of seeing that we're being repressed and we're just looking for places where we can mean something, that we can have a purpose, that we can continue to lead and be what evolution made us be, again, we're suppressed, condemn that they're acting violent. And so those outbursts becoming more and more perverse or more off to something that has no relation to something positive or beneficial to society. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting how there's several explanations to how this condition of total male absence on the subject of pregnancy, and I mean we were cultivating this already with our culture, which, for example, some have written or hypothesized that it has to do with the kind of religions we had, that sort of made Jesus the representation of the male as this passive thing that needs to get crucified and turn the other cheek, and so we're supposed to be non-significant. We're supposed to surrender. And then venerating Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary. And they say, some people have said that this has resulted in, for example, that our divorce laws, instead of considering the natural requirements of the family, which is that these children continue to have a strong bond of respect and nurturing by both parents, that they see that there's a good relationship between the parents, that they are respected and so forth, and learn to interact with respect and respect for society through the parents and all the things that evolution made us to grow up through, be preserved. And so the set of divorce laws would have kind of looked at the parents like saying, okay, so how are you planning on, expecting this, not kind of giving in to the whims of their capricious kind of, I can't get along with her. No, he's, I want him far away. I want him dead. I want to take all his stuff, and here, just take all my money and go away. The court adapted to these things, and then for some reason there was this conclusion that the mother is the most important thing. And no. Some will argue that the father is the most important to some parts of character building, especially in boys. And with women, it has to do more with the trust they will have towards society. But the father is just as equally important in the development of the child. And if the development of the child in this family had been the priority of divorce laws, our typical divorce outcomes would look very different to what they used to look. It's gotten a little better, but basically it's the same thing. It's like the woman gets to have everything, and it's always looked at with the male is sacrificed, but we don't even know why anymore, because it's not because so that he can continue building the world, and be free from the family so he can continue to be a leader in society, but it's so that we can bury him even deeper. I don't know. But so what was I getting at? Okay, the solution. Before I get to the solution, a possible proposal, I think there's a concept that we should all remember. It's very important for today's attempts at complicated social arguments. And it is that the law, and this is about when we talk about international law regarding countries, sovereignty, or the law regarding families, and any law, all law is written to satisfy something that is already unchangeably inherent in the form of the species of the mind. So, in other words, we can't be wrong necessarily if we say this law is not fair, we need to change it. Anybody can argue that. Some people I've argued with like to say the law is everything. You got to respect the law, and if the law says it, and and they want to take all arguments to conform the law, especially when they become good at wielding this law, because they know how to work this game. They played this card game for many years, and they know how to work you out of whatever you are trying to obtain more justice, or whatever your need or request is. We can't keep you from that because we know how to work the law, right? Some countries are doing that with international law. But it's important for many other reasons that we remember law against attacking and hurting somebody. Why? Because all of us don't like to get hurt or attacked before any law was written. We punish people for stealing. Why? Because it hurts our feelings when something is robbed from us. We're all the same way. And so a law was created. Laws were written and created on top of something solid to serve us, because we have things that are simply the way we feel, and now of course there are laws that are more brainy, in order for equal distribution, but basically the or fair distribution, or a proper way of this industry or whatever working, or government institution, but basically they all stem from the same place. The seeking of fairness is something that touches the feelings and the offense and the irateness of anybody when it's unfair or unjust. And so all law ultimately is a creation of our intelligence, of our logical and analytical intelligence, which is trying to serve ourselves, which is trying to design, to invent something which as a system will address something that is ultimately the most important thing to preserve, which is how we simply are and won't change inside our minds. And as a collective species, first of all, before being individuals, we collectively, let's say, children is a hard one to miss, but to get wrong. But let's say, okay, let's say, for example, that we're in a, I'm not even going to try this. where are more importantly, it's the collective is more important. The collective health is more important than the individual health, not because the individual health is not important, but because for the individual to be healthy, the collective needs to be healthy. We've learned this through a recent pandemic. We need to take care of the virus not spreading in the whole population, but you saw how difficult it is to get this idea, to realize we have to quickly organize ourselves as a world and cure the virus, make everybody immune or what have you, so that each individual will not suffer the virus. And so you saw how challenging it is to understand that we are ordered through collective integrity before we are ordered or understood through the individual, because it goes basically against every ideology and thing that we throw around saying, you know, this is important because I am important, you know, and that has led to a whole bunch of ideas about society and about sexuality and feminism and abortion and a whole bunch of stuff, because we're in a world that has honed only a premise of individual right above. The collective is secondary. And if we can get there, we'll think about everybody. That's kind of what we have always been. Instead, it should have always been the opposite. It should have always been, well, but let's think of the species. How did the collective evolve? What does every one of us have in common? What, you know, so that we can find us. And then eventually that leads always to every individual. So that needs to be inverted. Uh, and so far as abortion, understanding it through organic means and not through a polarization of ideologies means that we look at how we are designed as a collective, and we know that a child needs both parents to grow up fully in the most optimal way evolution has made us, with a reference of mom and dad, which, yes, we're resilient, we can substitute each other. Mom can do dad for dad can do mom, and sometimes a brother can do dad, or a sister can do dad or mom or what have you. Yes, we are resilient. We're not, things are not going to fall apart just because a father dies or a mother goes to war and dies. But there is an optimal configuration which constitutes the majority, the vast majority of evolution, which should matter to us as a reference to basically get to truth, instead of debating and exploring, reinventing the wheel and saying, well, you know, I say this, and all these people and all these books and all these intellectuals and blah, 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 blah say this. And so and I insist that this logical, analytical intelligence of humankind is our great gift, and also is we should not follow it. We should not obey it and be so arrogantly sure of it. It always tends to get it wrong, because the reference is, like I said in the case of the law, the organic base of how we're simply made organically by evolution. And so that means that this capacity that we have, so much larger, so much beyond what animals are capable of doing, which is our logical and analytical intelligence, theirs is like this, ours is like this. You know, we're like exploring how to colonize another planet, and analyzing the chemistry on other worlds already. You know, and they're just kind of looking up and saying, I wonder what those dots in the sky are. So that much more advanced. It's not that animals don't have logical and analytical intelligence. They do, but you know, they only go so far. We have this, and I suppose you could say the price. It has its own craziness. You know, it's going somewhere. It's going to pull us. Maybe it's the spearhead of evolution. Who knows? But whatever it is, it certainly doesn't care so much where we came from. And therefore, by following our intelligence or our analytical, logical, we are destining ourselves by just blindly doing what we invent and what we produce in our complicated ideological engineering logics, and just blindly saying, okay, this is what we got, this is, no, we got it pretty good, let's just do that, and never questioning, never realizing that its tendency is to go away from nature and always perpetually sort of tend to veer into its crazy aired ways. And that is basically our problem in human civilization, that we follow our intelligence instead of saying, wait, we're following something that you know is going to take us away from what is best and truest and healthiest for us. So let's always be vigilant. It's always constantly, nonstop, 24/7, every second of the day, upon every invention, everything we complicatedly concoct up in our heads, whether it be an ideology, whether it be a bridge, a new type of bridge. We have to stay vigilant that its tendency, its nature, is to, get it wrong and eventually not care if we trip and die along the way, because it's going somewhere. And anyways, that's probably the most important realization that humankind can make. Of course, it would change the world. It would create something new. It would create a new sort of conscience, but also a new kind of department, something that says, wait, just keep your eyes on government, because they're always going nuts and getting everything wrong, because they work through analytical, inventive, ideological intelligence, and so we're like looking at the human form, the human design, the organic design, what society and natural clan, natural family, natural tribe, and or natural cells of collective organization dynamics are like, to stay healthy, to stay fully expressive of all their cognizant senses, and fully always pumped up to the maximum extent of its thriving physical ability. And so we're always saying, well, are they making sure that is continuing to stay fully optimally healthy? And so that means it would be kind of like a new overseer that the world has never known, and that would also mean that our inventions, our administrations, our ideologies, our ideas, and our engineering would also start all of a sudden have a conversation with somebody that's always keeping tabs on it, and making sure that it's not about to kill babies in a war, or create something that ends up destroying humanity, and so they get better in turn, because they're listening to the ones that are checking to make sure they continue taking care of ourselves, of themselves, of the species, of how we use our intelligence. And so that means that by simply bringing the father back into the equation of what to do when the pregnancy is not wanted, and we feel that we would prefer if after a few weeks of barely any human development, we prefer to terminate it. That before the medical institution, which the woman goes to when she decides to have it, before the law, which the woman can do by configuration of ways and protocols and whatever, before others, before a woman may tell her best friend socially, maybe the mom, is her confidant, because that's possibly the most natural expression, is how it gets expressed socially, her decision. Before all these things, the male responsible for that pregnancy, shares in his own expression of that decision. So that means that the medical institution would require the guy also be there through the abortion. He was there during, I'm not saying that you're going to obligate a I know everybody just immediately thinks of the most far off, far-fetched, absurd extreme that would not be possible here. Yes, we understand that you can find those cases. But what we're aiming for is that society gets molded in these with coming generations in this kind of respect and regard for ourselves. And so, if the institution is one where the male is required, in most cases, the worst case that most commonly may be the case, is a guy that had a one night stand and you have to go look for him on the other side of town and say, I got pregnant, you need to be there because I have to go see a doctor. And so blah, 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 but he'll go. Okay, that's the worst thing that can happen, right? Typically. Most cases, I believe what you will have is a concession, a man that says, I know very well what I was risking. Of course, I know, I understand, I have to be there. Okay. Whatever that form takes, it is the effects on the thinking, the continuing thinking about abortion that society will evolve, having this different way of thinking about it. So before the medical institution, the male has to be there and be also waiting room, holding hand, I don't know, but also very much part of it. Before the law, if one has to somehow, however the law is, she is present in obeying the law or in registering or in requesting through whatever means the law makes available. The male is also doing that. So if government knows, well, we have so many abortions, it's not just counting women, it's counting the man and the woman for each abortion that occurred by name, just like the woman is counted by name. And then, as this different way of thinking about it, of course, the social ways would also come. Today a man basically walks away, doesn't tell anybody that a girl he was with had to have an abortion. It's like maybe he might tell a friend, but in this other way of treating, respecting, and honoring the pregnancy and the abortion of the human being, it would also be something that affects the guy, just like the happiness of a pregnancy affects the guy emotionally, and he goes to work and, hey, I'm going to be a dad. Well, sadly, it would also be part of his life. It will also be, a girl I was with has to have an abortion. I'm having an abortion, sort of say, kind of like my pregnancy had to be terminated. Like hippies say, I'm pregnant. When a guy says I'm pregnant, well, kind of the same thing with, and whatever cultural form we give it. But what matters is thinking about ordering our reasoning this way. And my theory is that if we create a society by the guidance of our institutions, as institution does give form to future society, not entirely, sometimes it's the other way around. We obligate government or law to, we'd like to think that it's more than what it actually is, but actually we are more conditioned by the forms, the rigid forms of government and law than what we're able to realize. We believe in war because we think of war as an alternative because we've lived in a world where our governments, people, the mass of people are really not so much where a collective thought of warring another country arises. It is in the facility of a small instrument, which is government, where few people can whimsically decide, this is what we got to do as a country. And so war gets enacted by the will of few people who are detached in the co-handlings of an inert governmental system and decisions that can command others to go forward and do this war. But the people are not really the ones that would agree to, hey, sometimes there is collective, it has come to be because it exists in the human collective. But after we took it to government, we should ask ourselves, how much is it now an occurrence or something that is occurring because of government, and how much is it because the people want to war that country? you know, um, is a fair question today. Apparently, the answer is obvious because there's tons of people that are saying we don't want this, and they're all crazy and they're all hypocritical, and look at what they're doing. They're basically saying we don't want this. You little group up there, you're all nuts. You're doing this because it's easy for you. It's easy for you to push buttons and command people to go do things, but we don't want it. That's basically what all the criticism and commentaries and oppositions and what have you, oppositions are saying. That the people really don't want to be in constant war after war after war. It only happens because it's easy for people who are so detached and from their desks, they can dispense of a decision. Uh, Sacrifice a family member, maybe if they feel that they don't want to be the one that wants to respond to that criticism. It's easy for you to send soldiers, right? And so they send their own kid. But really, the problem, the social condition of civilization is as such. And so the idea is that by being different about abortion in the way I described, or the father also becomes an equal participant in all that has to do with what that sexual encounter resulted in. Not just when it's good, when it's pregnant, but also when it doesn't go the way that the birth of a child would have made it be. Needs to be there, will result in things balancing out to something that is truer to us. And I'm venturing to say it will probably be less unwanted less unwanted pregnancies occurring. Whether it be by rape, whether it be by people that were too immature, they only realized after the seriousness of pregnancy that they really weren't ready to be parents. And that would probably mean both feel the same way. I see it unlikely that this older, mature man would say, but I did want a family. And the little, 21-year-old says, no, I don't want it. That's kind of an unusual thing. If you bring the agreement together, I think that by ways that maybe I could understand better and are indeed understandable and much better explainable, it will, than I am able to do right now, it would balance out to where the problem is taken care of. Hardly any unwanted pregnancies occur. When they occur, an abortion does occur, and these much fewer instances, it won't be such a weird, uncomfortable, secretive, traumatic thing for society. It will be, yes, something that happened, we wish it hadn't happened, but it won't be so traumatic or so necessarily kept secret. It just should be the way to go about it. And it should result in many less unwanted pregnancies by simply conforming to respecting the design of the collective species and the father, and everything that he would bring to the situation. Because if the father, think about it this way, if in a Western society where imagine a Western society where men were as much of a pillar in the family and society as they are in a Muslim country, except that we weren't a Muslim country. We continue to be our wonderful Westerners, except that the men were the pillars of society. Okay, imagine that. Try to stretch your imagination and try to do that. And I can see how easily, and that's kind of what this different concept would bring. I can see how there would hardly be any men that just don't care and go to bars and pick up easy girls who are not caring either if they get pregnant, and because they can resort to he says to himself, well, she can just go and get an abortion, and she says, well, there's always a clinic I can go to, and all that. And men that are totally disregarding, not naturally, as I explained already, but because of how society and culture has made us be sports-like towards sexuality. I'm not saying that every time we have to be sanctimonious and seriously mature about sexuality. No, but have an awareness of what we're actually doing, and that should be just make it that much less of a performance race and more of a rich personal experience. Even if we don't see any connection to relationship, weddings, matrimony, or commitment or anything like that, but still that we regard it for what it is in the species, in our biology, should give us a better caliber of character, of personality, of sentiments, of ways of treating our sexuality. And that would mean there wouldn't be any men that, or there would be many less men that just recklessly go have sex without thinking, okay, wait, who's taking care of, are you on the bill? I mean, men do that because we can't escape our natural design and kind of ask. But the frivolousness is dispersed in the millions, right? And so that's what results in the numbers. And still, men do kind of always can't escape their design, their sense of bonding to the pregnancy and the possibility of a child and so forth. And so they ask, are you on the pill? I don't want to have to worry about it, right? Well, this other scenario would be, are you on the pill because I ran out of my pill, and so I just want to make sure that, oh, well, let's wait until the girl says, let's wait until both, let's hook up again next week when you are back on your pill. And so both have a social sense of what sexuality signifies, which leads directly to how many unwanted abortions there would no longer be. So that's basically the idea, the concept. The proposal, which I promised, this much longer video, sorry about that. Okay, ciao.